Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today, Hurricane Florence, a warning for the makers of e-cigarettes, and details of Apple's big reveal. Those stories and many more in less than 10 minutes. Plus, hang out after today's news for a bonus interview. We're talking about a unique and huge sporting event that's in the path of Hurricane Florence. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Thursday, September 13th. You ready? Let's do this. We start today with updates about Hurricane Florence. New forecasts show it's at least weaker. The Weather Channel says it's now a Category 2 hurricane, down from a Category 4. But officials say it's still massive and still dangerous. Also, new forecasts show a wider area that could be impacted. There's still some uncertainty. 10 million people are under hurricane watches or warnings. It's expected to hit near the North Carolina-South Carolina border, likely Friday afternoon now, and then drift southwest and kind of hang out there. So now Georgia's governor joined the Carolinas and Virginia in declaring states of emergency to make sure extra resources are on hand. The Washington Post reports parts of the Carolinas and Virginia could start to see tropical storm force winds as early as today. Then tomorrow, places like Wilmington, North Carolina could see 100-mile-per-hour winds, blinding rain, and dangerous storm surges. The storm surge is when the water level along the coast rises higher than it typically is. Then you have rain on top of that and strong wind, which causes power outages. Power companies say as many as 3 million people could lose power with this storm and not get it back for a while after. The National Weather Service is still saying it'll be a, quote, storm of a lifetime for parts of the Carolina coast. And remember, more than 1.5 million people have already been told to evacuate. Universities throughout the area have canceled classes, thousands of flights will be canceled or delayed, and many of those airlines are now waiving baggage and change fees. For anyone who doesn't have somewhere to go, though, there are 300 Airbnb hosts offering free rooms to evacuees, as well as shelters. Today is the final primary day of 2018, and there's less than 2 months to go now until midterms. Tuesday, voters in New Hampshire went to the polls to pick their party nominees for the midterms in November. Then yesterday, voters in Rhode Island made their decisions, and today, the New York primaries. The most high-profile race of them all? Today's race for governor of New York. It's between the state's current governor, Andrew Cuomo, and the actress, Cynthia Nixon. She's best known for her role in Sex and the City. Stay tuned. Oh, also of note, President Trump gave the thumbs up to economic sanctions against any foreigners who try to interfere with U.S. elections. CBS just fired another executive. The company says the executive producer of 60 Minutes, Jeff Fager, is leaving because of a company violation. Fager allegedly sent the CBS News reporter covering the story about him a threatening text. And that officially is the reason he's now gone, at least while the investigation about harassment claims at CBS continues. Fager was accused of sexual harassment in The New Yorker, in the same articles where a total of a dozen women accused the CEO, Leslie Moonves, of misconduct. Moonves stepped down Sunday. Fager and Moonves say the claims just aren't true. But it makes a total of 3 men now forced out of CBS because of sexual harassment and assault accusations. The first was Charlie Rose, the former CBS This Morning anchor. The number of teenagers using e-cigarettes has apparently reached a, quote, epidemic proportion. That's what the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is saying. And now that government agency is warning the makers of these devices. The New York Times reports manufacturers like Juul Labs now have 60 days to prove they can keep e-cigs away from minors. Or else, the FDA will take flavored e-cigs off the market altogether. The companies could even face civil or criminal charges. Oh, and electronic cigarette sellers are not off the hook from this one. The FDA sent more than 1,000 warning letters to retailers like 7-Eleven and Walgreens, telling them to stop selling e-cigs to teens. Electronic cigarettes are illegal for anyone under 18 years old. Juul Labs told The Times it's working with the FDA and is committed to keeping the product out of the hands of young people. E-cigarettes have fewer toxic chemicals than regular cigarettes, but the government is pretty worried that millions of teens are now hooked who never really started with the regular ones anyway. Well, if you want to be healthier, you'll be glad to know that today's sponsor is the Million Pound Mission. Adam Shively is on a mission to help people around the world, including you, live a healthier life. And he's already doing it with his Million Pound Mission podcast. People have left reviews saying it's not just about diet and fitness, it's about why you might fail and the mental part of it. Adam knows how important that is because he lost 100 pounds himself and then became passionate about helping others do the same. and now he's offering a new two-phase program. It's called the Transformation Reboot. It makes it clear this is not just a new diet or a new fitness program. Instead, it's designed for the person ready to get out of the vicious cycle of weight loss and regain once and for all. And I know there's only a certain number of spots available in that Transformation Reboot program, so head on over to millionpoundmission.com to learn more about it and see if it's right for you. Or listen to his free podcast at millionpoundmission.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the news. All right, it's time to talk about the highlights of Apple's big reveal yesterday. So there are 3 new iPhones. Number 1, iPhone XS. Yes, it's written like iPhone X, but it's actually pronounced like the Roman numeral, so iPhone XS. Then the second option, the iPhone XS Max. This one has the largest display ever on an iPhone, and the XS Max is also the most expensive iPhone ever. It starts at $1,099 and goes up from there. The third option is also the cheapest new version. It's called the iPhone XR. It's not exactly a budget phone, though. It starts at $749. All 3 come with Face ID instead of a fingerprint home button. Pre-orders for the new iPhone XS and XS Max start tomorrow and go on sale the 21st. Pre-orders for the XR, the cheaper one, start a month later in October. Apple also came out with the Apple Watch Series 4. The biggest change? A new, larger curved edge display, and it got FDA approval for its heart monitor. Right now, cities of all sizes have a chance to get a low-cost loan or even a grant from JPMorgan Chase. CNBC reports the bank has promised to give $500 million toward a new program to help boost the economy in cities around the world. The program is called Advancing Cities. The requirements to apply deal with at least 2 of the 4 areas: jobs and skills, small business growth, neighborhood revitalization, and financial health. Winners will be announced early next year. NASA might be getting some sponsors, as in the Pepsi spacecraft. Well, it's at least looking into the idea. A committee is now trying to figure out if it's legally allowed. The New York Times reports NASA's administrator asked the question, could selling the naming rights to a spacecraft help offset some of the costs? NASA needs new funding, but critics say this could create conflicts of interest or hurt the public mission. But don't expect this to happen anytime soon. At this point, it's just the research phase. White Castle is taking its meatless burgers nationwide. CNBC says the fast food chain tested the plant-based mini burgers earlier this year in a few stores, and apparently they sold well. The burger is made up by the startup Impossible Foods. White Castle is taking its meatless burgers nationwide. CNBC says the fast food chain tested the plant-based mini burgers earlier this year, and apparently they sold well. So the burger is made by the startup Impossible Foods. And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know every Thursday after the news. And this week, I, of course, have Hurricane Florence on my mind. But I thought, what stories are not being told right now? And then I heard from my friend and fellow podcaster, Glenn Hebert from the Horse Radio Network. He reminded me that there are a lot of farms with livestock in the Carolinas that have to evacuate, and it's just not that easy. And right now, he is actually in North Carolina at what is basically the Super Bowl of equestrian sport, the Olympic Games of horse events. And Reuters reports riders from 70 different countries have all come into North Carolina for this big event. So now they're all getting ready to feel the effects of Hurricane Florence. Glenn is the founder of the Horse Radio Network, that is one of the largest podcasting networks in the world with numerous shows and tens of thousands of listeners. So here's my conversation with Glenn Hebert. Hi, Glenn. Thank you so much for making time. I know you're crazy busy and have a lot to think about right now, but I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I want to first get an idea a little bit more about the event that you're at. How many people are at this thing? How many animals are at this thing? And what are you being told about the hurricane on its way?
We're at the World Equestrian Games, which happens every 4 years. It's kind of like our Olympics for the horse world. And we are toward Asheville, North Carolina, which is in the western part of the state in the mountains. We are expecting 250,000 people. It's actually one of the largest spectator sporting events in the country for this year of 2018. And this particular event, like the Olympics, moves around the world. And we'll have 700 to 1,000 horses here competing in all the different competitions over the weekend.
So the one time out of 4 years that this event is happening, now you're kind of having to think about the weather and what happens with the hurricane. Where are you located in terms of having to worry about it, and what's the feeling there right now?
Well, of course, that's changing by the minute as the hurricane is changing its course by the minute. Right now it's predicting to hit South Carolina coast and then hang around and move up. If it moves up the way they're saying now, it'll move up over us. Now, it'll be dissipated somewhat by then. We just got a report that we're looking at, probably 6 to 10 inches of rain here with 40 to 50 mile an hour winds over a period of time, which, we're in a very rural location here with a lot of trees. And, we could be looking at trees down and power out. They always take into consideration the safety of the horses at an event like this first and the riders.
And I think it speaks to the strength of this storm that you're located where you are. You're not even on the coast and everybody's still talking about it and thinking about it.
We're 260 miles inland. But this storm is 500 miles wide, which, by the way, is the size of the length of the state of Florida.
And you're from Florida, so you have horses there, and you know what it's like to have to evacuate them and deal with them during a hurricane situation. And there's farms all over the Carolinas that are closer to the coast and are going to be dealing with this. So give us an idea of what people have to think about right now, not only just them and their families, but their animals. And what does that take? And what goes through your mind in a moment like that?
On our shows, so we do shows about horses, and on our shows, we're always encouraging horse owners to have an evacuation plan. The part of the problem is, it's easy to move your dog and your cat. You throw them in a crate, put them in a car, and go. With horses, you have to have a place to put them. You can't just throw them in your car. So you have to have a horse trailer. If you don't own a horse trailer, then how are you going to get your horses out? So we tell people to plan ahead, be prepared. How are you going to move your horses? And a lot of people have more horses than they do spots in their horse trailer. So if you have to make multiple trips to wherever you're moving them to, then you have to take into consideration it may take you days to move your horses. So it's something that we warn people about all the time. And there's a lot of horse owners on the coast of the Carolinas. And I've been seeing on our social media with our listeners and all of our listeners' friends who are moving out. We're seeing pictures of trailers rolling out with their horses. And sometimes it's just, you have to know which direction to go away from the hurricane and finding a place to go. But I will say this, the horse world, and with the help of social media, Facebook especially, there's all kinds of pages set up for evacuation of horses where people will go on there and say, I have room for 20 horses at my farm. I'm in Virginia. I'm in Kentucky. The horse world is incredible when it's time to come to people's aid. Last year during Irma, which ironically was this week, last year, we had to evacuate our horses to a better structure during Irma. So there was one of our listeners that said, we have a concrete barn, it's a bunker, bring your horses over. We were over there for 3 days.
I did read at least one news article that said there are horses and other animals that are being left behind. Are you concerned about that?
I mean, we're always concerned about that. And what we encourage people to do then is they mark their horses in a number of different ways. Horses can be microchipped. We also recommend just spray painting the name and phone number of the owners on the horse. They'll do that. They'll mark their hooves with waterproof spray paint. So we highly encourage people, if they're doing that, then you've got to mark them in some way. They're going to, a lot of times horses will fend for themselves and will find a way to stay safe. They know how to get the shelter that's kind of built in, if they can get the shelter, if their pastures have shelter. So flooding obviously is a big issue, and that's the one we really worry about. And these storms, flooding kills more people and animals than the wind does.
Right. And that's a little bit of a concern even where you're at.
Yeah, if we end up getting a lot more rain and this storm stalls and we end up getting 10 to 20 to 30 inches, even in the mountains here, then you're talking about landslides, you're talking about mudslides. Where we are and where the house we're renting is pretty secure. But, I just worry about people who live in the outlying areas and people who are coming in from all over the world for this event.
And you can learn more about that event or the Horse Radio Network or any of the news stories we talked about today in today's show notes. Go to thenewsworthy.com, click episodes, and find today's date. Thank you so much for listening today. The Newsworthy is ready for you by 4 a.m. every weekday, so I'll be back with more news tomorrow. Have a great day.